Call centers carry a huge part of the customer experience today. Every day, every hour. When it runs smoothly, nobody notices. When it breaks, everyone feels it instantly. In the queue, in the customer's mood, and inside the team. And I'm not saying that as an outsider. I worked in customer service, student housing in college, and I still remember what that pressure feels like in your body. Back pain, exhaustion, being at the end of your nerves. Parents would call and yell about dorm assignments like you personally designed the entire campus. And half the time, it wasn't even about the dorm. It was stress from work, missing their kid, a fight with their spouse. It all landed on the person wearing the headset. You become an underpaid therapist on top of doing policy work. That's why it's worth taking a sober look at AI phone assistants. Voice AI evolving faster than almost anything we've seen in customer service. Tools are improving, models are getting faster, and expectations are rising at the same time. And in this episode, I'll show you how AI phone assistants can measurably relieve call centers without hype. We'll go through the levers that actually matter in real operations, fewer repeat contacts, less after-call work, better handoffs, and more stability during peak demand. By the end, you'll have a clear framework. What voice AI should handle, what stays with humans, and which metrics tell you whether it's truly working. Let's start with the context. This is a big topic. More than 560,000 people work in the contact center industry, and pressure is rising from both sides. Customers expect faster help, while companies push harder for efficiency and contact avoidance. In recent industry studies, employee satisfaction sits around 44%. That's a pretty clear signal. This isn't only about tools anymore. It's about pace, workload, and how much breathing room a team actually has on a normal day. And that breathing room is literal. In customer service, you learn quickly. The phone picks up everything, even a sigh. So you control your breathing, your tone, your patience, while you're repeating the same policy line for the 10th time. Voice AI can make a real impact right there. But to make that concrete, we first need to understand what actually creates pressure inside a call center. In call centers, stress usually comes from a combination of four things. The first is emotional labor. Agents stay professional even when callers get irritated or escalate. That sounds simple, but it's constant work. Controlling your voice, staying friendly, de-escalating. Over weeks and months, that takes real energy. And it's not just customer service issues. People bring their personal lives into the call. Loneliness, fear, anger, that has nothing to do with the actual ticket. I've had callers who clearly just wanted someone to talk to, and you're expected to absorb that. Fast, polite, and on script. The second, occupancy. High occupancy looks efficient in a report. In daily reality, it feels like a day without breathing space. It can feel like landing airplanes back to back. One call ends, another one starts, and you're already behind. Because while you're on the phone, your emails are piling up. Someone is on hold, and the next task is waiting. When there's barely any time between contacts, recovery drops. And that's exactly when quality becomes hard to hold steady. The third is case mix. As soon as self-service covers the easy issues, the conversations that reach humans automatically become more demanding. More edge cases, more emotion, more context. It's not worse, but it is heavier, and it changes how the workday feels. A well-being study from the contact center environment reports that 53% of frontline employees experience at least one stress or burnout symptom. One key driver is this shift. Fewer easy calls, more difficult calls, and breaks becoming harder to protect. And I've seen that dynamic up close. The worst calls weren't always the loudest. Sometimes the most stressful moment is when you can't answer because you know you'll have to reach out to a coworker who's already overloaded. The fourth is the feedback loop from attrition and absence. When people leave or call out on short notice, the remaining team carries more load. Add recruiting, onboarding, and a higher error rate during ramp up, and it pushes back on morale and service quality again. I also managed and coached agents, and that has its own wear and tear. Weekly scorecards, one-on-ones, trying to support people working night shifts, some with kids, some working in a second language. You want to protect their dignity, but you're also measuring performance in a system that rarely protects recovery. Industry benchmarks cite attrition around 25% and short-term absence averaging about 6.2%. Both act like multipliers. Okay, now let's look at the mechanisms that actually relieve pressure in a measurable way. AI phone assistants don't relieve call centers because they sound cool. They relieve call centers because they remove work from the system, or they prepare work in a way that reduces friction for humans. And to be clear, the point isn't that AI can replace the human part, the empathy, the intuition, the ability to hear what someone is really calling about. It can't. The point is to protect humans from the parts of the job that fry your nervous system. Repetition, peak, chaos, and messy handoffs. Lever 1 is deflection or containment. That means a portion of calls gets resolved directly in self-service, without an agent taking over. The biggest impact comes from repetitive contacts. Status checks, opening hours, plan info, profile changes, password resets. A Forrester TEI study on contact center AI cites 20 to 35% deflected calls. That's a realistic range when you stay disciplined with intent selection. Lever 2 is shorter talk time and less after work call for standard cases. A lot of minutes happen after the call. Creating tickets, updating CRM, writing notes, triggering follow-ups. Voice AI can automate parts of that or prepare it. And that relief is very real because after work call often clogs the day. Lever 3 is pre-qualification and context handoff. In practice, this is often the lever that has the strongest effect on both quality and stress, because one of the worst feelings in customer service is starting blind. Who is this? What happened already? What did the customer try? What system data exists? Did authentication happen? When a call escalates, it helps enormously if the agent can immediately see who the customer is, what they need, what's already been said, what data is captured, and whether authentication happened. The conversation starts clean, and the customer doesn't have to tell the story again. Lever 4 is stability during peak demand. Volume spikes push queues up, push occupancy up, and pull quality down. A voice agent can absorb exactly in those moments, resolve standard issues, route cleanly, and triage cases. That makes the whole system calmer, and teams feel that instantly. Up to this point, it sounds like a clear win. Now comes the factor that decides whether relief actually feels good day to day: case mix. Self-service changes which conversations land with humans. When you automate the easy topics, the share of difficult topics rise automatically. And here's the part that people miss. That means even if volume drops, the day can still feel harder because the average cognitive load per conversation increases. If self-service fails, the customer reaches a human already frustrated. You're not starting at zero, you're starting mid-conflict. You can manage that load as long as you take it seriously. You need two things. First, a clear escalation logic that kicks in early before calls spiral. Second, workforce design that makes recovery possible. Break planning, shrinkage, assist tools, and skill-based routing. In other words, Voice AI works best as a system design project, not as a pure automation project. Now let's make it concrete. What does a stable flow actually look like? A practical voice flow stays simple. The inbound call comes in. The system detects language and locale. Then you have a greeting plus a privacy notice. After that, you clarify whether identification is needed. If yes, you run an auth step. For example, PIN, DTMF, or OTP. Then intent detection starts. And now you run two checks. How confident is the intent? And is the intent on the automation list? If both fit, the workflow runs via API. Check status, book an appointment, update the CRM, send confirmation. Then the agent closes cleanly, often with a short satisfaction question. If an escalation signal appears, you do a warm transfer. A human takes over with context, transcript, intent, auth status, and a short summary. That saves time, saves nerves, and increases the chance the case gets resolved on the first contact. Okay, now to measurement. Most teams look at AHT first. AHT stays relevant, but you need context because the mix changes. That's why I recommend a combined KPI set. First, containment. How many calls end resolved inside the voice agent? Ideally weighted by intent. Second, human-handled volume. How many calls truly land with the team, and how that changes by intent and during peaks. Third, occupancy, but as a day-long curve, not just an average. Fourth, FCR, because repeat contacts create direct load. Fifth, CSAT or NPS, so you can see how the journey feels. And then you add HR indicators. Attrition and short-term absence, because if you've ever ended a shift with back pain and a fried nervous system, you know these aren't abstract metrics. They're the difference between a team that holds and a team that breaks. A realistic pattern looks like this. Human volume goes down, peaks get calmer, FCR rises through better handoffs, and HR metrics move in the right direction over time, when breaks and tooling improve alongside the rollout. Quickly, the economics. Let's say 100,000 inbound calls per month. After the maturity phase, you reach 25% containment. That's 25,000 fewer calls for agents to handle. If you conservatively estimate 3 to 5 euros in fully loaded cost per agent handled call, the leverage from deflection alone lands around 75,000 to 125,000 euros per month. On top of that, you get effects from less after-call work, more stable peaks, and lower attrition. And here's the human translation. Part of the capacity should become breathing room, not just tighter targets. To make that real, you need a clean rollout. Phase 1 is discovery and baseline. You mine the top intents, measure volume, AHT, and occupancy curves, and clarify compliance. Phase 2 is a pilot with a small set of standard intents and a consistent human-in-the-loop approach. Phase 3 is scale with integrations. CRM, CTI, auth, knowledge, routing. Phase 4 is operations, monitoring, transcript, sampling, confusion lists, drift checks, and clean change processes. One best practice matters a lot. You deliberately reinvest part of the capacity you gain into breaks, coaching, and quality. That builds resilience in the team. And lastly, a quick word on governance. Voice systems process personal data. Transcripts often contain identifiers. Some use cases touch sensitive information. That's why you need transparency at the start of the call, data minimization, and clear retention rules. For payments, secure paths like DTMF and tokenization make sense. With guardrails, QA, and clean escalation, you build an operation that earns trust and stays stable. AI phone assistants measurably relieve call centers when they reduce repetitive volume, cut after-call work, improve handoffs, and stabilize peak demand. The key is system design. Clear intents, clear escalation, and metrics that show efficiency and workload at the same time. There's dignity in this work. Staying calm when someone else isn't, that's a skill. The goal of Voice AI isn't to replace that skill, it's to protect it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.